Hello and welcome to this edition of Wineskins, a program that features reflections on the lives of the saints and sacred scriptures, along with information on topics and issues from a Catholic perspective. I'm Father Jim Korda. Wineskins is brought to you by the Annual Bishop's Appeal, the Catholic Communication Campaign, and St. Paul's Catholic Books and Gifts, a division of the Society of St. Paul. On our show today, I will interview Rabbi Joseph Schonberger on Passover. We will also look at Good Friday and what it means, as well as reflections on the readings for this Palm Sunday Passion of the Lord. That and more coming up on Wineskins. In our current issue, I will talk with Father Michael Balash about the annual Chrism Mass. Joining me again is Father Michael Balash, who is the Director of Worship for the Diocese of Youngstown. Welcome back to Wineskins.
Thank you very much.
We know that coming up very soon is the annual Chrism Mass for the diocese. We know several years ago it was moved from a Thursday to a Tuesday, so we'll kind of talk about that. But what is that whole celebration of the Chrism Mass all about?
Well, I think first and foremost, the Chrism Mass celebrates our unity as a diocesan church. We come together from all parts of the diocese to gather and to bless the oils that are used in all of our parishes throughout the year. The oil of the catechumens, the oil for the sick, and the sacred chrism. But I think it also is a time for us to kind of reaffirm our unity as a people of faith.
I do know that over the years, and maybe prior to probably Vatican II, that the Chrism Mass was mainly kind of a priest gathering around their bishop, but it's more than that, as you had mentioned. How do people here in the Diocese of Youngstown celebrate Chrism Mass, and how have they done that over these many years?
We come together as a diocesan church, and at that Mass, in addition to the blessing of the oils, priests of the diocese renew their commitment to serve, the bishop renews his commitment to serve, and the faithful renew their commitment to be part of the church. And so I think that helps bring about the unity. And then that is solidified, I think, in the distribution of the oils, the blessing of the oils that we use throughout the church. So I think it's a great way for the church to come together from all parts of the diocese and to be reminded, perhaps, that we're part of something much bigger than our local community, that we're bigger than the town that our parish is in, and that the diocese is also bigger and the church is bigger than the Northeast Ohio, that it's part of a worldwide institution.
Of course, the Chrism Mass always takes place during Holy Week. Traditionally, many dioceses have celebrated it the morning of Holy Thursday, but for lots of reasons it was moved. Has that been a good thing for our diocese?
I think it has been. I think traditionally it was on Thursday of Holy Week, and unfortunately what that led to was a lot of rushing from the cathedral, especially if you live a distance away, to get back for the Mass of the Lord's Supper that evening. With it being on Tuesday, it just allows for a much more relaxed atmosphere. We don't have to rush to get back for services in the parish. And I think it just provides a greater opportunity for more people to be there.
Let's go back very briefly about the three oils, the two that will be blessed and the chrism that will be consecrated. The significance of using oil within the sacraments of the church. Why has that been a substantial part of who we are as Catholics in our symbolism?
Well, I think part of our richness of our faith is our rituals and the symbols that we use. Fire, bread, wine, water, and oil. And oil has a lot of meanings to it. It can be very soothing, can be very enriching, and it can be very healing. And it can also be very empowering. And so the oil that we use in our rituals help bring about the greater meaning of the sacraments. The oil of the sick, when it's used in the anointing of the sick, brings a very powerful sense of healing and comfort to people who are suffering. The oil of catechumens brings a sense of welcoming and entrance and initiation. And then obviously the sacred chrism, used at confirmation and for ordinations, is an oil of empowerment and a discipleship.
I know over the years the Diocese of Youngstown has celebrated counties within the diocese and deaneries with a banner kind of procession. Is that continued this year?
This year we're going to continue the event that we celebrated last year. If you recall, we celebrated our 75th anniversary as a diocese, and county-wide banners were made. And delegations from each parish in that county processed in, not only for the Chrism Mass, but for the anniversary Masses as well. Again, as a way to celebrate our unity and our togetherness. That's going to happen again this year, where parishes are going to be asked to send at least 2 people from their parish to be part of that delegation, and they will process in the opening procession behind their county banner.
And the date and the time?
It is April 7th, and it's at 10:30 in the morning at the cathedral in Youngstown.
Father Michael Balash, thank you again for being with us. And we would like to let the folks know that if you want to tune in to the Chrism Mass, you can live stream it at doy.org website. For Wineskins, I'm Father Jim Korda. This coming Friday, the church celebrates Good Friday. To tell us more is Martha Coulter. She is from St. Jude Church in Columbiana.
Good Friday is a religious holiday where all Christians commemorate the crucifixion of Jesus Christ and his death on Calvary. This special day is observed during Holy Week as part of the Paschal Triduum on the Friday preceding Easter Sunday. According to the Gospels, the crucifixion of Jesus was most likely to have been on a Friday, the day before the Sabbath. According to the Gospel accounts, the temple guards, guided by Judas Iscariot, arrested Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. Judas received 30 pieces of silver for betraying Jesus and told the guards that whomever he kisses is the one they are to arrest. Following his arrest, Jesus was brought to the house of Annas, the father-in-law of the high priest Caiaphas. There he was interrogated and then sent bound to Caiaphas the high priest, where the Sanhedrin had assembled. Conflicting testimony against Jesus was brought forth by many witnesses, to which Jesus answered nothing. In the morning, the whole assembly brought Jesus to the Roman governor Pontius Pilate, under charges of subverting the nation, opposing taxes to Caesar, and making himself a king. Ultimately, it was the charge that Jesus claimed to be God's son that incurred the final wrath of the chief priest, who then encouraged Pilate to have him crucified. Both faith and history tell us that Jesus is indeed the Son of God and the suffering servant of the prophet Isaiah, who came to set people free from sin and death. And 3 days after his crucifixion on that first Good Friday, women came to the tomb and discovered it empty, and were met by a vision of angels who exclaimed, "The one you are looking for is not here. He has been raised just as he told you." On the third day, which is Easter Sunday, Jesus rose from the dead. For Wineskins, I'm Martha Coulter.
Joining me again is Rabbi Joseph Schonberger from Temple Element, and it's a pleasure to have you back on Wineskins, Rabbi.
Glad to be here.
You know, last time you were here, we talked about Hanukkah. Now we find ourselves in the spring season, and so we'd like to have you share with us the celebration of Passover. Where does Passover originate, and why is it important for us, not only as the Jewish community, but also as the Christian community?
Passover celebrates human freedom, and it originates in the Bible that we share, in the book of Exodus. And we see that the book of Exodus shows us the small stages that a society or a group is put through in order to be suppressed. And in Exodus, eventually the Israelites were enslaved, like many other people. But it happened in small increments. Their freedoms were taken away, and then finally the government, headed by Pharaoh, limited the children that were allowed to be born and to survive. And so the suppression was complete until they became powerless. And a lot of people went along with it because it was from the majority of the government. And that process repeats itself throughout history. And then God brought the power of redemption through Moses, the prophet, to remind the people, you should not have let this happen. But since it did happen, we have to continue in faith, because part of the suppression and the taking away freedoms was not allowing the Jewish people to believe and to live by faith. And so Moses came and with God's help was able to bring freedom to the people of Israel and escape and begin a whole new life. And it's really the prototype to appreciate freedom for every people. And throughout history, it's been a prototype even for the American Revolution itself.
Let's talk about that whole concept of being suppressed and that concept of slavery and how that was really integral with all of that. How do we translate that into faith terms and seeing kind of like getting rid of the bonds and the chains of slavery and being allowed to freely celebrate who we are as people of faith?
I think one is remaining with the relationship with God, the covenantal relationship with God, being aware that we succumb to all kinds of idolatry, where people give their loyalties instead of to God, to things that they prefer themselves. There are so many things with which we have that, and it compromises who we are, it compromises our faith. And so for Passover, we have complete cleaning. We clean our homes totally physically, and we go through a spiritual cleansing as well, because we want to try and get rid of all those things that hold us back, that weaken our faith, that weaken our resolve, that maybe compromise our relationship with God. It gives us great strength. I think for several years, when Passover came, I went on a yeast-free diet, because we're supposed to get rid of all those things that have things with grain for a kind of more pure life, to strengthen our immune system. And I think when we live with great faith, it strengthens our spiritual immune system so that we can have greater strength to face life and benefit from the wisdom that God gives us. And most important, I think, live life with meaning and purpose. That's the big reminder that we have, that Passover reminds us of, that there's an order to existence that God gives us, and that each of us is here with a purpose. That gives us a sense of meaning, because we can go through just about anything in life if it means something that's important, that's significant.
You know, as you were talking, obviously for us as Christians, we have the season of Lent that reminds us of our kind of spiritual spring cleaning, and then obviously the Easter season. So how important is it for us to remember that as people of faith, we kind of go through these cycles or these stages that organized religion has really placed before us? We have an opportunity, like on an annual basis, to do these things. Does it teach us something about how we are to live our life on a daily basis?
We need these reminders because we can take life for granted. We can lose perspective. So we traditionally have the Sabbath every single week to remind us, to get a little taste of a day that we commit to holiness, to study, and so on. But we need also to have a greater effort with Passover as with other holidays during the year, so that we're reminded that our life should be with God. In Psalm 85, there's a verse, Ashrei Yeshvei Veitecha, blessed and fortunate are those who dwell in God's home. And the idea there is that it should be not just in the synagogue or in the church or in the temple, but our environment. Wherever we are, we should feel that it's God's dwelling place, that we're sharing our life with God. And Passover reminds us about that, because for Passover, we completely transform everything in our environment. We get rid of all the food that we had during the year. We start actually a month before. For Lent, I think you start 40 days before, right, so that it culminates in transforming our environment to be as sacred as possible and to remind us how we should live, that our environment should be sacred and shared with God, and then it'll make all the difference.
One thing that came to mind as you were speaking is Paul's words in the New Testament, where he says, he reminds us that, did you not know that you are the temple of God, that the Spirit of God dwells in you? So, that's kind of who and what and where God is, and reminding ourselves that we and our bodies are really the temple of God, and how important understanding that we not only have respect for ourselves, but others' temples as well. And how important is that for us as people of faith to engage in that respect, not only of ourselves, but of others. Any final words that you'd like to share with us about Passover, especially for yourself as you celebrate it?
Passover is the ultimate family time, the ultimate community time. That reminds us about priorities. Every person, as you said, is sacred. We have a sacred soul within us that's a generator of sacred light that is connected directly to God. And so if we could only appreciate when we are with every person that we share that holiness, that sanctity, and if we could only live that way every day, the world would be transformed. In Passover, we take time to be together. We invite strangers. We invite everybody. There should be no one who doesn't have a home to share Passover with, so that they have this feeling. It should make a difference for the whole entire year after that.
Rabbi Joseph Schonberger, thank you so much for being with us and for enlightening us, especially on Passover, but also of the human community and how important we are as people created in God's image and likeness. So thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you and bless you.
For Wineskins, I'm Father Jim Korda. For more information and to listen to Wineskins, visit the website of the Catholic Diocese of Youngstown at www.doy.org. Stay with us. We'll be back in a moment.
The Johnsons enjoy Friday dinners out. Nothing fancy, just time together to reconnect as family. They make sure others eat as well. By giving to Catholic Charities of Youngstown, the Johnsons join other angels who care for those in need, regardless of religion or race. Show your wings with a gift to Catholic Charities, changing lives one family at a time, providing housing, emergency financial assistance, senior services, and more. Give now at ccdoy.org.
By the time we can walk, each of us yearns for the joy that comes from being able to do for ourselves. Church World Service believes that being self-reliant is a joy everyone should share. So around the block or around the world, share the joy. Church World Service.
The song we have for you today is from the CD called From the Cross to Glory. It is by the Kellenberg Memorial High School Choir.
There's a place
And to tell us about the scriptures for this Palm Sunday Passion of the Lord is Sister Regina Rogers. She is an Ursuline sister and the pastoral assistant at St. Edward Church in Youngstown.
We begin again. All of Lent has led us to this week, this Holy Week. There are a number of questions that come to mind as we listen to the Passion account according to St. Matthew. One question is why? Why does an innocent man, a godly man, suffer and die in such a horrific way? Jesus upset and even alarmed members of the Jewish hierarchy by his attitude toward the legal demands they placed on the poor. They were indignant because he challenged their authority, and they despised his association with sinners and his critique of public religious practices done for show. And they were threatened because the people seemed enthusiastic about Jesus and were eager to follow him. Rumors that Jesus might be the Messiah caused tension for both the Jewish leaders and the Roman government. So the Jewish authorities handed Jesus over to the Romans, who knew him to be a menace, a man that others claimed was the Messiah or king. They also viewed Jesus as a troublemaker who was inciting the people both religiously and politically. So Pilate ordered Jesus to be put to death. Listen a little closer to the story. Think about its meaning for us today. Do not just remember the crucifixion story as a tragedy that occurred over 2,000 years ago. The crucifixion of Christ is happening today, in our world, by us. Why do good people suffer today? We hear of Judas Iscariot selling out Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. What is our price? How much does it take for us to back down from doing what is right? How much does it take for us to remain silent in the face of wrongdoing? What do we gain from leaving our beliefs at the door of the church? How often have we said, "There is nothing I can do"? Jesus knows what is coming. He knows that the leaders of his community are against him. Yet he does not run and hide. He continues to preach God's message of forgiveness and love. He continues to aid those in need. Do we quit? Do we say, "What's the use? Why try? I'm only one person. Nothing will change"? Yet our call as Christians, as followers of the one crucified, is to be Christ in the world today. We cannot give up, no matter how bad life can get or how afraid we can be. We cannot leave the work of Christ to others. We cannot hide or pretend or say that we are too old or too busy. Our identity as followers of Christ matters in the world today. It matters to those whose lives are filled with pain and sorrow. Why was Jesus crucified? This question should give us pause to examine our lives and how we imitate Jesus. Could someone make a case against us? Could we be convicted of helping the poor, eating with sinners, placing people above the law? Each of us walks the road to Golgotha. Each of us suffers, and each of us will die. We don't know why good things happen to bad people and bad things happen to good people. We don't know why people die in wars, car accidents, from cancer, why children and young people are taken from us, why some people commit horrific acts of violence and hate. Like Jesus, even though we might feel abandoned, we know that God is with us, and we are offered the choice to commend ourselves to God, to trust God, and to believe that each moment of our lives, God is there with us,
in ways we don't understand. God was with Jesus on the road to Calvary. God was with Jesus at the moment of his death. God is with us too. We might not hear God's voice or feel God's presence. We might ask that the cup of suffering end. The dark days of our lives, like the darkness of Holy Week, will give way to the promise of resurrection. So this week we journey with Jesus, knowing that like Jesus, our life will be changed, not ended. For Wineskins, I'm Sister Regina Rogers.
Every worthwhile thing in this world has come to us through sacrifice. Jesus is the one who died for our sins and sacrificed himself for our eternal salvation. All we can do now is humbly and graciously pick up our crosses in life and sacrifice them for him. Wineskins is made possible through the annual Bishop's Appeal, the Catholic Communication Campaign, and St. Paul's Catholic Books and Gifts. The program is produced by CTNY, the Catholic Telecommunications Network of Youngstown. I'm Father Jim Korda, saying thank you for being with us. Have a blessed Holy Week. And CTNY would like to express our blessings to our sisters and brothers in the Jewish community as they celebrate Passover.
What have you done for your marriage today?
I gave my wife a hug this morning. I told her I love her.
I did her hair this morning. I think it looks pretty good.
I cooked my husband's favorite breakfast.
I bought her an orchid.
What have I done for my marriage today? I sent my husband a love email.
I read the newspaper to my wife, and it cracked her up. But she's still laughing.
What have you done for your marriage today? Make a change for the better. Need help? Go to foryourmarriage.org, a message from the Catholic Church.
They say America is the land of opportunity, but for some, life isn't so easy. Right now in America, 1 in 6 children lives below the poverty line. That's nearly 13 million children of all races, all across our country. Where do you draw the line and get involved? You can make a difference in more ways than you think. Go to povertyusa.org today, because 1 in 6 children in poverty is one too many. A message from the Catholic Campaign for Human Development.